shot.
What do you ask me?
And action.
Jose Nel, wife of the late, great and famous Philip Nel. What was that man really like as a man?
Now you ask a wife to speak about her husband. I think I had the most wonderful husband in the whole world. And we were married for 55 years. And you're wanting to speak about a rugby player. Now, he was a great rugby player, but I must tell you that rugby was not his first love. He was a born farmer. He was a dedicated farmer. I always used to tell him that his sheep came number one in his life. He was very dedicated to his sheep, his cattle, his horses, his pigs, his fowls, his farms. And I was just his wife who went along with him for 55 years. Now you ask what sort of a man he was. He was a very big man. He was big in every way, not only physically, but mentally and spiritually and in every way. He was a fine gentleman. They always say that rugby is a hooligan's game for gentlemen. Well, if ever a gentleman played rugby, it was Philip Nel. Played the hooligan's game. Now, I don't know, what else would you like to know?
What was it that particularly attracted you as a young girl in Greytown to a man like that?
That's a long story, you know, because our families were very great friends. In a very small community, like our Afrikaans community in Mvoti, the families were very close to each other. And our families, I think there was a good deal of arranging going on. Because between friends will go to each other and say, I've got a beautiful daughter, she's marriageable. You've got a beautiful son. Let's get them together. And that's what happened. They got us together. And from when I was very small, but he made a most perfect husband.
So it clicked right
Okay, and off we go. Thank you.
And so the relationship clicked right from the beginning?
Yes, it did. But I had no idea about it because I was still very young, but he knew what was going on. At any rate, he was a very magnificent-looking man. The rugby selectors who used to select the Springbok teams in all those years, there were a whole lot of them. One of them was George Devonish. I don't know if anyone ever remembers George Devonish. And he spoke to me once, long after we were married and Philip had been playing rugby. And he said, you know, Mrs. Nel, I've had many, many young men come through my hands wanting to be chosen as Springboks. But I've never seen a more magnificent specimen of manhood. Yeah, that's what he said about the man physically and his whole personality. He was a very outstanding man.
I've heard the word charismatic used regularly in describing him.
He was indeed.
Now, tell us what life in Greytown and rural South Africa was like in those days, those young days.
Well, we were farmers, and the life was very, very hard because we got married during the Depression of 1929-30, and he worked very, very hard. He had been working for his father on his father's farm, but he never got a salary. When we got married, we had no money, nothing. Today, everybody says, I can't get married because I haven't any money. But we got married with no money. But he made the money. He was a very, very successful farmer. My father was a sheep farmer, and he gave me 200 merino ewes, and they brought me in a lot of money right throughout my married life because they increased. My husband looked after them, and we managed to survive.
Now, when you went away on those longer tours, how did the farm get managed and kept going as a going concern?
Well, I didn't go for the whole period that he was gone, and my father, who was also a very successful farmer, helped me and ran the farms while we were away, my father.
Tell me, do you recall his reaction when he was first picked as a Springbok?
He was first picked in 1928 when we were engaged, and he was very thrilled, and so was I, but we were not yet married. And then after he had played in those test matches, he told me that he wanted to go farming. He said that he wanted to give up the rugby because it was quite a business for him to go to practices. He used to have to go on horseback. He used to go on horseback and leave his horse in Greytown, and from there by taxi to Maritzburg, and he was finding it rather much. He wanted to do his farming. And he said to me he was going to stop playing rugby now. He wants to go and do his farming. So I said to him, no, he mustn't leave just yet. He can go on for a while. So he went in the 31-32 tour to England. And when he came back, he said he's not going to play rugby anymore. He wants to do his farming. And then he was persuaded by the selectors to be chosen in 1933 as the captain, and he was chosen in 1937. So when he had played the last test, he said, that's it. And he threw his boots in the sea. He said he's going farming now. He wants to go to his farm. So that was the end of his rugby.
So do you think in many ways he was a reluctant captain?
I think he was very happy as a captain, and he was very, very well loved by the team. The younger members of the team all called him Oom because he was 35 years old and some of them were only 19 and 20. And they had a very, very great respect and a very great regard for him. They called him Oom.
Now, how did you feel when you used to go and watch him play in these test matches and provincial matches?
Very excited, and I used to shout for him. I remember in England at Twickenham, when he was playing at Twickenham in 1932, and I was with some other South Africans. We were sitting on the stand, and we were shouting, "Vrystaat, Vrystaat!" You know? And the English people came and said, "But what are you saying, and where do you come from?" We said, "We come from South Africa." We were shouting Vrystaat.
He was not only the captain of the team, but as captain he was the coach. Was that important to him?
Oh yes, in those days they had no coach. They had no coach at all. The captain was the coach, and the captain ran the whole team. And he actually looked after them like a lot of children. He looked after them, he took care of them.
Did the throne behind the scene have anything to do with the strategies and the coaching methods? I mean, were you consulted?
Never. I know nothing about rugby. No.
He played with some pretty remarkable personalities, given time gone by. What did he ever have to say about people like Danny Craven?
I don't know. Danny Craven was vice captain to him, captain in New Zealand. That's all.
Tell me, you were on that tour to
Yes.
New Zealand, I believe.
Yes. Well, towards the end, yes.
That was pretty unusual in itself, wasn't it? What were the circumstances of being on tour?
Well, my husband wanted me to go. He made all the arrangements for me to go. He paid for me and he booked all the places and everything before I even went. So he wanted me there, so I went.
Were there other wives?
Not in New Zealand that I know of. There were relatives of mine who went together with me, and we travelled as supporters on our own little group. We did not travel with the team in the bus.
But you obviously went to the test matches.
Oh, all of them. I went to every single match. And I have never in all those years been at a match that Philip has played that they have lost. Not one. In all those years, I never saw him playing in a losing match. With the result that I've got a little cutting from a New Zealand paper where he said that I must be his mascot, because every time I've been there, he's won. The team has won.
In that series, the rules were different than they are now. You may or may not recall. When the ball went into touch, the team had the choice of a line-out or a scrum.
Yeah.
And he's on record as saying, very sternly, "We will scrum it, sir." Do you remember those circumstances?
He was lectured before he left for New Zealand by, what did they call him, Obas Makota? Was it Obas Makota? I think that's the name. He said to him, "Phil, take scrums, scrum them behind their line." And he took Makota's advice.
I think there was also a telegram, wasn't there, a famous telegram that he received that just had 3 words.
Scrum.
Scrum, scrum, scrum.
Makota, yes.
What was the atmosphere in New Zealand like in those days at games?
They were wonderful, absolutely wonderful people. The most hospitable people that I've ever come across. And kind, and really I can't tell you too much good about them. They were wonderful people. And they were very good there was never any bad feeling. I can't remember a single bad feeling at any of the matches or anything, nothing. No,
Did you get much chance to actually mix with New Zealand people?
You know, they were very, very kind. They arranged, I think they were very intrigued by the fact of a wife coming across there, because they entertained me no end. I was invited to tea parties all over the place. And the Maori women organized a tea party for me, and they sang and danced for me. They were most charming people. There was a woman called Rangi. She was the tourist guide of tourism in New Zealand, and she was most kind. And they gave me this.
Now that is a tiki.
Yes.
Do you know what the tiki represents?
It represents fertility, and it's made of green stone. It's a beautiful thing, green stone, which is like jade. And they also gave me a skirt that the Maori women wore. And they gave Philip this carved walking stick. They were most charming people. And I was invited, my husband and I were invited to farms to see how the New Zealand people farm. I was filled with admiration of the women there, because they ran their homes and everything without any maids like we have to have. And I was filled with admiration of those New Zealand farmers.
Before the 37 team went away to New Zealand, there wasn't a very big belief in their ability to win.
In whose ability?
In South Africa's ability to win in New Zealand.
Oh.
But I think that attitude drastically changed as a result of that tour. Do you remember how they felt about themselves on the way home?
Oh, they felt great. Of course, they had one party after the other. And I had a very big party when he threw his boots in the sea. And I think the Springboks themselves got a better opinion of themselves.
In later times, did he follow the game? Did he express
yes.
much about it?
Oh yes, he used to go and watch every game and take a great interest in it all. But he was offered organising jobs on the rugby board, but he didn't want them. He wanted to farm. got onto the South African Wool Board, and he travelled all over the world with a wool board. He was very, very keen on the wool board and the farming. That was his life.
Now, if my memory serves me correctly, he actually did play rugby again after he threw his boots overboard. Didn't he play in a test against New Zealanders in the war?
Oh, up in Egypt.
Yes.
There was something up in Egypt, but that was just a friendly thing. The New Zealanders got up there and they organized a little newspaper, which I have. It's called Sand something, and they played rugby up in Egypt during the war. I think he could have played a few times there just for fun.
What?
Sorry. Thank you. And action.
Why do you think he retired after such a successful tour when in 1938 there was the British Isles tour?
He couldn't wait to go back to his farm. He was a dedicated farmer.
Did you have any part in that decision?
Not. No, but I did recognize the fact that he was quite determined to go farming, to do his farming.
When he got back from the 37 tour, he was then a famous man. How did he handle the fame?
He forgot all about it. He just became an ordinary farmer and a man interested in going over with a wool board. He made a lot of friends with the wool board, and he met a lot of New Zealand wool board people. While he was in New Zealand, he played against a man called Doug Dalton, who played for the All Blacks. And Doug Dalton came over and visited us twice. He became very friendly with Philip.
It was remarkable in South African rugby that he was captain twice. Was that remarkable to him? He was captain in the circumstances where you were generally captain for 1 year, but then he became captain a second time.
Yes, in 1933 he was captain when the Wallabies toured South Africa, and then in 1937 when they went over to Australia and New Zealand.
Did he regard that as special?
He was a very humble man, you know. He was not I don't know. He was just an ordinary, humble man. He just took it. I suppose he was very happy about it, but he never ever bragged or made much of himself, never. He was a family man. He adored his family too, and his children, and his grandchildren. We have 15 grandchildren and 11 great-grandchildren, and they are number one, priority number one, not only with him but with me.
When he went to school at Maritzburg College, he'd never played rugby. Did he ever talk about that to you?
Yes, he said that an uncle of his had played rugby, his father's brother, and he had injured his hip, and he'd got a hip disease and he died. And his father had forbidden him to play rugby. So it was quite a business to get him to play rugby at college, but he did. And within the second year he was in college, he was captain of the rugby, captain of the cricket, captain of the, cadets, and all that sort of thing. He was a big chap.
So you would describe him really as a born leader?
Yeah, oh, definitely, very definitely, but a gentle leader. Not aggressive, never aggressive. His employees too on the farm, old black men, they adored him. They all also called him Baas Oom. And they were not only his employees and his workmen, but they were his friends. And to this day, those old people remember him and they remember me. And they come and they visit me and they make much of me if they see me, because we were friends with our employees, great friends with our black people.
With the remoteness of farming in somewhere like Greytown, Did the boys in any of his teams keep in regular touch?
Yes, some of them used to come and visit. Pat Lister used to visit very regularly, and Ferdy Berg and his sons used to come. His sons came and spent a whole holiday with us, and sometimes we had some of their children who used to come and spend a holiday on the farm with us. Children of the old Springboks. Yes.
Well, Mrs. Nel, thank you very much for talking with us. It's been a fantastic honour.
Well, now, are you going to show this in New Zealand or not? I would like to say, if you are, that I would like to send my love to all the wonderful, admirable wives, housewives, and to all the charming Maori women, and to the All Blacks. I send my love.